The ceramic coating rabbit hole.
Hi, I'm Ivan.
I'm Nick.
And this is the DIY Detail Podcast. Today we're going to dive a little deeper into ceramic coatings. We get a lot of great questions on the YouTube channel and the Facebook group and everywhere else we participate about ceramic coatings, and some of you really like to dive deep, so we're going to indulge that today.
Some people want to know how much ceramic content is in each coating, and others want to know which coating should they choose that would be best for their vehicle and why. Some people want to know about sweating or rainbow, what happens when the coating flashes. Other people want to know about the ridiculously long names in the chemistry, Ivan. This is the video for all of those nerds, those geeks in their hearts, in a good way.
Exactly.
This is the video for you.
Exactly. So, start it off, Nick.
All right, well, let's talk about ceramic content. Whether people are asking the right questions or not, though, like how much SiO2 is in there? Or, I think they're asking questions based on other times they've heard these terms. I don't think anybody out there has a chemistry degree, and if they do, well, they know more than I do for sure. But they ask very, big word questions about the chemistry, and I'm not even sure what it is they're asking, Ivan, but you get a lot of these questions. Maybe talk about the questions you get, what you think they're really asking, and then what it is that folks really want to know.
Right. So one of the questions, like you say, we get is what is the ceramic content of your coatings? And it's first of all, a very difficult question to answer. Secondly, it's proprietary. But finally, it's a question that really doesn't matter. And I say that in the most respectful way, but it's a question that's brought on by other companies' marketing, because they'll market, we have 90% solids content, or we have whatever. And that's all fine and dandy, but in the end, it really doesn't make a difference. What makes a difference is what's left on the paint and how it reacts to the paint and how it works together. An example, one of the ingredients in our coating is silicon carbide, not ceramic carbide, silicon carbide. And when you look at silicon carbide and you look the SDS sheet, there is no silicon carbide in our coatings, because silicon carbide is a byproduct of a chemical reaction of when you put it on the paint, it forms silicon carbide. So we can't say there's X percentage of silicon carbide in there, because in essence, there's 0% until you actually put it on the paint. SiO2 content. SiO2, yes, it's a extremely fine powder that is put in there. Silicon nitride, same thing. Polysilazane, it's a combination of different things that come together to form polysilazane when it's on the surface. And then finally, the silicon carbide. So those four ingredients harmonize to come together to form the ceramic coating, give you what's left on the surface. And that is what's most important as far as I'm concerned, is what are your results? Trying to choose a coating by what's in it, it's good, it's okay, but it's not the be all and end all. 20 years ago, when coatings started to be becoming popular, every coating company, or a lot of them, would have this little chunk of what looked like glass, and they'd say, if you let our coating harden, this is what it looks like. Well, in reality, you don't want your coating to get that hard. You don't want your coating to look like a piece of glass over the paint, because what breaks down coatings the most is fracturing. And fracturing is from the expansion and contraction of the paint or the clear coat on the vehicle. And that coating has to follow that expansion and contraction. And as it's doing that expansion and contraction, it starts breaking down those really hard glass-like coatings. And you don't see that marketing aspect much anymore. But 20 years ago, everyone was marketing that way, or not everyone, but a lot of companies were marketing that way because it seemed like a really good idea at the time. And listing ceramic content seemed like a really good idea at the time, but in reality, it doesn't make a difference.
Well, you've talked about, and we can show an image of this, clear coat is like a sponge. And when you see this old black and white photo, it's actually really illustrative. It's like, oh, that's what my clear coat looks like?
Yeah.
So one thing that I would ask you, as a person who understands the do-it-yourself enthusiast, but also who maybe has taken for granted things that I thought I knew, their perspective is like, what is a ceramic coating? It's a layer of protection, right? And does it really matter? I don't know. People might want to know anyway.
Right. So a ceramic coating is something that goes over top of the existing paint on the vehicle. And Technically, water is a coating. When it's on the vehicle, it's coating the car. So the term coating is extremely large. Your paint is a coating. It's coating the metal. The term coating is big. Ceramic is what is interesting for us. And what that ceramic coating is doing for you is providing, first of all, and most importantly, better chemical resistance. The next thing it does is provide gloss, slickness, all that fun stuff that we like. And the last thing that, not something I like to point out, not something I, as a professional, ever marketed to consumers, but is increased marring resistance. And I won't say the S word because it is not scratch resistant. A coating never has been, never will be. But a way to explain how the ceramic is mar resistance is simply its coefficient of friction. It has a much lower coefficient of friction. So that slickness that you feel, the dirt that's on the vehicle slides off easier without grabbing in. And if that little dirt particle grabs the paint as it's going, that's when it forms a scratch, or that's when it forms the marring. So if it's sliding over the surface, it's lubricated by that ceramic coating, then your car is not going to get as scratched up. Yes, you're going to get marring over time. And depending on how you maintain your car, that could be a month, and that could be 20 years. It really, goes down that far. Your personal maintenance of your vehicle is by far what's going to make a ceramic coating last longer or not last. That's really up to you.
And I know we're working with our chemist, though, to continue to evolve and to make just amazing products and coatings, right? And so are other companies out there. So they want to go out and market all of these, these chemistry developments. So how do we have that conversation with the folks out there who are listening to the other brands and let them know that we do have beefy chemistry? I know you mentioned all the big words, polysilazane, silicon carbide, silicon nitride.
Yeah.
What else am I missing?
And SiO2, silicon dioxide.
And SiO2, yeah. Silicon dioxide.
And,
but these are we say these words and I don't know what any of them mean, Ivan.
Yeah. So basically, if we break it down, polysilazane is normally used in industrial coatings. It's extremely tough, but it's not a sexy coating. It's not glossy. It's not slick. Polysilazane is just a tough coating used in industry. Then we look at the silicon carbide aspect, and silicon carbide is extremely chemically resistant, same as polysilazane, but silicon carbide even takes it to a little higher level. Then we have silicon nitride, and silicon nitride is not something that a lot of people incorporate into their coatings. It's a little more difficult to incorporate, sort of like graphene in our 3-year coating. Not everyone has figured out how to incorporate graphene into a coating. Same thing with silicon nitride. Not everyone has figured out how to do that. But what silicon nitride does, it maintains that gloss, it maintains that slickness, it maintains the hardness of the coating, but also the flexibility of the coating. So that fracturing that we talked about earlier, the fracturing is not going to happen as quickly or at all, for that matter, depending on the coating. And then the SiO2, it's the oldest aspect of coatings. And, some people call it quartz, some people call it glass, some people call it sand or silicon dioxide, SiO2, whatever. And it's basically a derivative of sand. But the SiO2 gives us, again, that slickness, that gloss that we so desire.
And so when we talk about ceramic coatings, then we have our 3-year, our 5-year, and our 8-year. And people will often ask me, what's the best coating? And I go through the different properties of each of our coatings, and I always tell them, you can't go wrong. They're all incredibly high quality. Like our 3-year graphene coating holds up to any pro coating on the market. I mean, it is that good. It's just, I guess that's a question for folks. How do you answer that when folks say, what's the best coating for me?
Right. So let's take this, we'll start with the 3-year. So actually, no, we'll start with ceramic gloss. If you apply ceramic gloss every time you wash your car, it's going to seem like your vehicle is ceramic coated, but it isn't, because it's missing one very important component, and that's the chemical resistance. Ceramic gloss is chemically resistant, but not as much as the coatings that contain the polysilazane and the silicon nitride. The ceramic aspect of ceramic gloss is SiO2. Like I said, SiO2 is good, but it's not the be-all and end-all of coatings. So the 3-year, we've incorporated graphene. And why don't we have graphene in the 5-year and the 8-year? Simple. Graphene breaks down very quickly through fracturing. And if you look at the graphene, you've seen the marketing images, they put one drop and it covers a football field with this super matrix of graphene, right? That matrix that we see, it looks like they put a screen over top of it, right? That matrix doesn't really exist in a hand applied coating. We're not getting that. But what we're getting is, if you look at it, under a microscope and all that fun stuff, we're getting clumps of graphene. And those clumps of graphene, that's where we get that water spot resistance. And that's why we want graphene in a coating, for water spot resistance. But those clumps that, they might be 10, 12, 20 molecules of graphene together that form that little matrix pattern, but there's one over here and there's one over there, and they're all over the place. Eventually, those little clumps are going to break down through fracturing. And the reason we say our graphene coating is a 3-year coating is because after 3 or 4 years, those little clumps through fracturing have broken down. So the characteristic we want from our coating, if you're choosing a 3-year coating, the characteristic you're looking for is water spot resistance. That's the one that's going to give you the best water spot resistance. It's like baking a cake. So we have all the ingredients, and if we remove graphene, the 3 coatings have all the same ingredients. It's how they're mixed together and also the proportions of each one that allow us to pick and choose the results. So the 5-year coating, we wanted something that would give you the best gloss possible. And it is a noticeably glossier coating than the 3-year and the 8-year if you put them side by side. But that extra gloss comes at a bit of a price. So gloss equals a bit more hardness, which actually equals a little more scratch resistance or marring resistance, but it also increases the potential of fracturing. So yes, we have silicon nitride in there, but the silicon nitride component is reduced in the 5-year coating to get the gloss that we want from the SiO2 and the silicon carbide. So those characteristics, we aimed at gloss. And we know the fracturing is going to take at least 5 years to break it down. And when we say 5 years, it's a regularly maintained vehicle. You don't need to put toppers on it. Just needs to be decontaminated, once every 10, 20,000 miles, depending on how it's stored. Now, if you're keeping your vehicle outside, you work in an industrial area, it's by a train track, you might need to decontaminate it a little more often. If it's a garage queen that only goes out on weekends or to get ice cream, then heck, you might be 5 years before you even need to wash it or decontaminate it. So it really depends on how you're using, but your average vehicle that gets driven 10, 20,000 miles a year, is outside most of the time, maybe garage kept overnight. That is what we're saying the 5 year is about.
And by the way, using our decontamination towel, it's so safe. It's so easy to just add that step after your wash. To just do a light decon periodically, right? You said 10 to 20,000 miles. Some people may want it every 4th wash. Just bring out the decon towel, and just no pressure, fold it into 4s. And just kind of, you can feel the paint, right? And it tells you what it might need. And there's times where I'm like, I don't need to clay this at all. Or other times where I'm like, wow, I'm glad I did this. I didn't really think I needed it. I just sort of, grab it. So it's a nice option to have. And then you just dry it, perforate it side up, and then roll it into itself. And you're good to go. So just a little quick PSA about the decontamination towel. All right, so the 5 year has a lot of gloss. You're providing us a lot of value as to some of the pros and cons there. And then the 8 year coating, right? It's our most expensive coating. So folks might say, well, why would I get that one?
Right. So the 8 year coating sort of combines everything of the other ones, except for the graphene, obviously. But what you're getting from the 8 year coating is the highest durability. So the highest resistance to fracturing. And that's where the 8 year coating has more polysilazane, it has more silicon nitride in it than the other ones. Those are the 2 major components of the 8 year coating. Now, of course, we have the silicon carbide, we have the silicon dioxide. It's still a glossy coating. It's still shiny. It's still slick. It still looks good. But it has that extra durability and extra chemical resistance. So that's what we're after with the 8 year coating is you're parking your car outside. It's never going in a garage. you're driving, 20, 30, 40,000 miles a year. You're like me, you're dragging it behind a bus all the time. Those are, extreme cases for a coating to go through. Or you like going, or you don't like, if you're watching this, you probably don't like, but you have to go through a car wash because you'd have no capacity of maintaining your vehicle. You live in an apartment, you live in a condo, whatever. You can't or don't have the time to hand wash your vehicle, then the 8-year coating is the best coating for you because it's the one that's going to stand up to the rigors of that automatic car wash, be it touchless or brush.
I love that. It's good to hear that too, because it's hard to find time to hand wash your car, especially in the wintertime here in Utah. It's without a garage. It's like, man, I miss washing my car, but like, should I just take it through the drive-through? And that's where having that coating to get you through the winter months does bring a lot of peace of mind. One question I have is, go ahead.
We have a fourth coating. Actually,
yes, we do.
Depending on how you look at it. So, So, well, actually, that's another one. We have our metal coating, and the metal coating is designed specifically for raw metals. So if you have a Cybertruck on order, you might want to order some of our metal coating. It's going to be great for that. If you're still driving a DeLorean, that's good for you. You have a stainless steel fridge or appliances in your house. The coating will make them easier to clean, easier to maintain. You have a classic car with all that chrome, the chrome bumpers, the chrome trim on the sides. That's where our metal coating comes in. You drive a Harley and you've got it all chromed out. Well, of course, you're going to need our metal coating. The metal coating is not for plastic chrome. So most grills today that are chrome looking, they're actually just plastic. But if it's actual metal
will it hurt anything if you mess that up and accidentally put our metal coating on plastic chrome?
No, not at all. So if you have a wheel that has a painted center and a machined edge, so a polished aluminum machined edge, you're going to use our metal coating on the whole wheel. Not a big concern. But the metal coating works best on raw metals. And our paint coating, while it will work on a metal surface, it's not going to last very long. And this leads to the last coating that we have, which is actually the stack. So the stack is a combination of our 8-year or 5-year stacked with the 3-year. I prefer the 8-year personally, but what we're doing there, and people say, is it going to give me a longer lasting coating? Maybe not, because I can make, like I say, quick beads or ceramic gloss last the lifetime of the vehicle, just like I can make our 8-year coating fail in 30 minutes. It really depends on what you're doing to the vehicle. But the stack is what I have on my personal vehicle. I've done it on a number of other ones. And it is just the ultimate. If you want slickness, if you want gloss, if you want self-cleaning ability, if you want, when I say gloss, my car, when it's clean, almost looks like it has an aura to it. It just glows. It's something
not bad for a Veloster, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's something I've never experienced before with other coatings. It's just a really deep glow that the car seems to have.
Any reason why that is?
Well, it is the way we're combining the coating. So a lot of people will put 2 layers of a coating on, or they'll put 2 separate coatings. When we're doing the stack properly, we're actually not putting 2 separate coatings on. We're combining 2 coatings on the surface at a very specific time. And our coatings are blended in a very specific way. It actually takes 2 weeks to make a batch of one of our coatings because we use what's called reactive blending. And reactive blending means you're putting component A at a certain temperature, blending it for X amount of time. Then you add component B, and component B might be at a different temperature. Component C will give you another temperature altogether. And the temperatures keep varying, the pressure keeps varying as well, the mixing time, etc. So that temperature is causing chemical reactions. Now, when we're doing the stack, we're sort of adding on to that because there's a definite time limit to do the stack, and that is 2 hours to 8 hours. So you finished applying your 8-year coating at noon. Between 2 o'clock and 8 p.m. is time to install the 3-year coating on top. And you're not putting it on top, you're actually putting it into. Past that 8-hour window, now you're just adding one coating on top of the other. And before that 2-hour window, you're actually diluting the 8-year coating with the 3-year. But that one little window of opportunity, and it's a 6-hour window of opportunity, it's not that small, but that window of opportunity, we're actually combining the 2 coatings. So the 8-year, most of the components have gotten there, they're into the pores of the paint, referring back to that image you mentioned. So now they filled those pores of the paint. There's a good chemical and mechanical coalescent bond happening with the coating, but the top surface is still a little soft, and chemically it can still be penetrated. That's when putting a 3-year into it, they combine, they create another entity altogether.
It does look amazing. I can't wait to see it coming up here in January when we get back together and film some content. Why don't we have a wheel coating is a question that comes up.
Yeah, we do. We have 4 of them. Actually, we have 5. My favorite wheel treatment is actually our quick beads, because quick beads is great for wheels. It just makes it easier. Every time you wash a car, put quick beads on your wheels. That being said, on mine, I have the 8-year stacked with the 3-year on my wheels. And the reason we don't have a wheel specific coating is we're not a company that really delves deep into marketing. And I say that with, the best intentions. There are some companies that make wheel specific coatings, and no, they're not just a relabel of their other coatings. But when it comes down to it, your wheel is clear coated. There's no difference between the clear coat on your wheel than there is on your fender of the car or the roof. And if you look at it objectively, you're going down the road, you hit the brakes. Well, yes, you're getting some brake dust going onto the wheel, but as we all know from decontaminating cars, it gets on the side of the car as well. So we have the same interaction there chemically. But your wheel, when it's going down the road, rainy day, there's a bit of sand on the road because they de-iced before or whatever. You're going down the road. What's getting more abuse, your wheel or the area of your car right behind the wheel? It's the area right behind the wheel. The rocker panel gets a lot more abuse than the wheel will ever get. And one of the reasons companies state that they have a wheel-specific coatings for temperature resistance. Well, guess what? All our coatings will easily withstand 1200 degrees Fahrenheit without a problem. And 99% of coatings on the market will all resist that temperature range without a problem. If your wheel gets above 375 degrees Fahrenheit, you no longer have a tire anymore. Never mind the wheel or the coating. So don't worry about it needs to be more heat resistant. The other thing that I see people doing is they'll ceramic coat their wheels and then they get these really harsh chemicals to clean their wheels. Once your wheel is ceramic coated, if you maintain it on a regular basis, there's no need whatsoever to get out wheel acid. There's actually no need for a product like All Clean. You can do it with the rinseless. You can do it with incredible suds. The wheel basically almost self-cleans. Just water on it will clean it just like it does on your paint. And people accelerate the fracturing of their coatings, be it our coating or any other coating, by weakening the outer layer of the coating a little bit or scarring it with a very harsh chemical. And that fracturing is what is going to break down that coating. So if you can, if you clean your wheels every 2 weeks, you won't need to use a harsh chemical on them. Rinseless wash or incredible suds will do the job perfectly.
Well, let's say someone asks, when you're spraying on quick beads, does it get in there in the rotor? Like, are there issues with the caliper? Like,
yeah,
is that a bad thing to spray quick beads willy-nilly inside of your barrels?
No, it's a good thing. And the first foot that you break, quick beads is gone from the rotor. And a lot of people say, well, the rust on my rotor after I clean my car. Again, creep the car forward a couple feet with your foot lightly on the brake and your rotors will be clean. You drive through a puddle, your rotors start to rust. It's humid out, your rotors start to rust. It's just the way they are. And as detailers, we look at the finished car and see this rust on the rotor and go, oh, I want that off. Just like I say, roll the car forward, roll it back, wipe out the barrel, and you're fine. But as soon as the customer leaves your shop or you're a mobile detailer or you're at home, as soon as you back out of your garage, you're still going to get brake dust on the wheels. That's what it does. Now, if you're going to afford carbon ceramic brakes, you won't ever have to look at rust on your wheels again.
But the quick beads is not providing too much slickness for the brakes
No.
to work. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just know that that's something that I've been asked before as well.
Yeah.
And the rabbit hole is long and deep, and sweating versus rainbow, right? When we apply the coatings, why do some sweat up into little beads? The other looks more like a oil on water look.
Yeah. And that has to do with the solvent carriers that are in the coating. Our coatings, the solvent carriers that cause the sweating aspect, I prefer a coating that sweats personally. But chemically, it couldn't be done because of the interaction of the everything else in our coating compared to that solvent that causes the sweating versus the rainbowing. In essence, it really makes no difference to your coating whether it sweats or it rainbows. And a coating that sweats, if you put it on really heavy, a coating that rainbows, if you put it on really heavy, it's eventually going to sweat too. But
yeah,
it's not a game changer one way or the other. It's just what is the chemist able to get out of that coating. And I know that a lot of chemists actually prefer, like myself, a coating that sweats, but it's not always possible.
You talk about a solvent carrier. That's something that a lot of people may know what that means, but what does that mean? Why does it need to have a carrier? Why is it a solvent?
Yeah. So a solvent carrier is a necessity. And when we grab a whiff of the coating, that's the solvent we're smelling. And, we're actively working to do a water-based coating. And a lot of companies are, going down that rabbit hole as well because it makes it easier to ship. There's a lot of advantages to it. The paint manufacturers have now been able to have a waterborne paint system. And eventually we'll have waterborne coatings. It's just, tweaking it to find out how it works. And when they say a waterborne coating, it's just this solvent that they're using is water instead of a hydrocarbon solvent. Now, a lot of them still have hydrocarbon solvents in them. They're not 100% water because they need to emulsify it, all sorts of other things. But the majority of the solvent carrier, what's evaporating off the car when they paint it, is simply water. In our case, we're using a solvent carrier, or we're using a hydrocarbon solvent carrier. We would like to use a water-based solvent, or water as the solvent, but it's not happening at the moment. That being said, the carrier is literally just that. All the chemicals that we have together in the bottle, if we were to leave them, just put the chemicals in and not put the solvent in, you would get this, sort of chunk in the bottle, and that would be it. You wouldn't be able to get it from the bottle to the paint because it just wouldn't be happening. It would be like rubbing a rock on your paint. It's not going to end well. So the solvent carrier is there to carry the chemicals from the bottle to the surface, allow you time to spread them out and to distribute them and put them into the surface of the paint, and then it evaporates away. And what we see as the rainbow effect is if you let it rainbow, so we also promote using circular motions. Circular motions reduce the incidence of high spots. And if you get really good with doing circular motions, you have almost no high spots whatsoever. And so you can put the coating on and you'll see you might have a high spot here, a high spot there, but the rest of the coating is clear even without you wiping it. That's because you've put just enough on, it's carried away, the solvents have evaporated away, leaving the coating on the surface, and then we just level with the towel. And we level with the towel. We're not removing excess coating, we're actually spreading it around thinner. So the high spots are being spread thinner. And you've used our coatings many times, Nick, and a lot of people have used them. They remark that we only use one towel to level. We use an insurance towel, but the main leveling towel, we just use one towel, not one per panel, one for the whole car. And that one towel doesn't even get damp, never mind wet, because we're not removing coating from the car if you're doing properly.
No, you're not. And that's an important distinction because it's easy to get that one towel real wet and not even quite know what the process is. I'm putting the coating on, then I'm wiping. But yeah, thinking about leveling the excess to make it thinner, and then you have your insurance towel as a different towel, different color. You just don't want that first towel getting wet. If it starts to get wet on you, you're leveling too soon.
Exactly.
Or you're applying too much coating. I mean, that's another thing. A lot of people ask me, can I coat a Toyota Sienna van? Or can I coat this Tundra? Like, we get a lot of people, will one bottle coat the entire vehicle? And I always tell them yes, but maybe you have a better way of helping them understand how to use less of this dang bottle. Because I've been guilty of using too much of it. And it's hard when you've never applied a coating before. It's hard to communicate this. You almost have to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And basically, it's as long as you're applying coating to the surface, you don't need to apply more to your applicator. That's the best way of looking at it. We're not trying to build on a 1/4 inch thick of coating on the vehicle. That's counterproductive. What we're trying to do is just get it on the vehicle. So as long as your applicator is humid and it's leaving, for lack of a better term, a snail trail behind as you're applying, and it's getting the surface damp with the coating, that's all you need. So people generally do overuse coatings, and especially their first coating application, because they're afraid that I'm not going to put enough on. And you actually cause more problems putting too much on than not enough. And the problems you can get with putting too much on, we mentioned the solvent carriers before, is it forms a crust on the surface. It looks fine. You level it. And then an hour later, you have high spots everywhere. That's because you form that little crust, but those solvents are still trying to get out of there. And they're forming high spots as they're coming out of there. So applying too much coating is not a good thing. So try to, emulate myself, which is being cheap and lazy. So the less often you have to put coating on the applicator, the happier you should be. And the less coating you're putting on the applicator, the happier you should be. The one exception is when we have a brand new applicator, it's dry. Yes, we're going to put 10 or 12 drops on there. But after that, 1 or 2 drops, and not necessarily per panel, but 1 or 2 drops when you feel you need to add more coating. And that means the pad is starting to get dry. It's starting to drag a little on the surface, and you're not seeing even distribution of liquid on the surface.
And then don't go ahead and dump 12 more drops on there. That's not the time, just
1 or 2.
1 or 2, start there. Because you can end up with a high spot that you don't see pop up later in the sun if you overdo this, right? So just trust Ivan. He knows the way. Speaking of the way, I can show folks the way to the stack, how amazing it is, the 8-year, 3-year. We have a whole kit on it, and there's a video for that, I believe, right here, Ivan. We'll see you there.
We'll see you in the next one.